Ersula Odom.
Maybe. Because I tell you what, the thing that I'm going to open with is you all talked about my birthday. It's May 6th. So all of those events that are happening on May 6th, you're celebrating me. No, I say that in good humor because when you're talking about history and you make a connection to a date, that's when you remember what's happening. So whenever I give a tour of Perry Harvey Park, I try to make it personal. I try to find something that connects to the person, group, or myself that they will remember. So I am Ersula Odom. I am the founder of Ursula's History Shop as of 2/2/22. Opened in. I also am a publisher and an author. I am the author of African Americans of Tampa, and I give the tour in Perry Harvey Park of the Perry Harvey Park and Harlem of the South, Central Avenue. Now, with that being said, the title today is a little cryptic. It says, "Guess what I found?" And the reason I did that is because when you talk about one kind of history versus another, it kind of puts you in a box, and I'm not there. I'm not that person. I collect things that would surprise the heck out of you, and you're going to find out about some of them today. Because when I opened Ursula's History Shop, I deliberately called it Ursula's History Shop because yes, I focus on African American history. I do. But when you walk in there, you're going to find some of everything. It is about history. And one of the things that I like to say is that when you're looking for African American history, you look everywhere because we're pretty much connected to everything, whether it is known or not. And I love the discovery. I love going, oh my goodness. For example, I found cutting sharp Scotch glasses that said Real McCoy underneath. Now, to some of you, the Scotch is what you think about, right? But when I saw Real McCoy, I realized that that's a black person. Real McCoy is the man, and his first name escapes me, but McCoy was the person that created the oil lubricating process for trains. And it worked so well that it became, people tried to duplicate it, and they failed. So whenever that failure was discovered, people would basically say, oh no, I want the real McCoy. So that's a black person. Who'd have thought? And so when I got the cup, or the shot, well, what do you call it? The Scotch glasses, I created a little flyer that talked about Cutty Sharp, the ship. Now, I don't remember that as well. It was a fast one, all I remember. But I also added the real McCoy. So I like to connect history with whatever it is that I found. And I like the scavenger hunt. I will go any and everywhere to find bits and pieces of history. Now, what prompted that for me is at one point I wanted to have a database that had everybody's birthday. So if you were born on April 13, 1952, I wanted to have an original document with that on it. So I collected everything with the date until I became overwhelmed. Can you imagine the number of dates that I would have to collect? So what I ended up with was a collection of a lot of different things, from first day covers to letters to documents, anything with a date. And in doing that, I found some rather fascinating things. Now, because I opened Ursula's History Shop, I'm now processing some of those things that I found. And because I realized I was going to talk about this today, I went and pulled out a couple examples that I will now begin to process. So, before I do that, one of the things I like looking for are old church programs or conference programs or anything like that because they have names in them. Being a genealogist of sorts, anything with a name, and then my fascination with dates. A name and a date, oh Lord, I'm good. So those church programs, let me tell you why they become important. I had one of my authors vending with me, and a friend of mine walked up. She introduced herself, and he said, well, that's a peculiar last name. I only know one person with that last name. And I went to school with him. Well, they exchanged numbers. He went home, found one of those church programs, found the name he was talking about because it was on a baseball team. It happened to be her father. It is now the only picture of her father that she has. That's why I like that. So when I can say, look what I found, that is a thrilling moment because it means that it is connecting you to your history, you to somebody else's history, or to a memory. And those memories are what gives us joy in the midst of all the stuff that's going on. If you can have a little private moment, nobody cares about it but you, it's all good. So in light of that, I have found things that surprise even me. This is one of two binders that I have, and I think it's actually the smaller one. And before I say that, I've also created in the process of creating a nonprofit called Rescuing History, because that's what I realized I had done over the years. I was at an auction looking for things with dates, and I happened to be at this auction quite a bit, so the man knew me. And it was in the beginning of an auction, they have things that they're just giving away so to get it going, right? Well, I looked at this box and I couldn't believe what I saw. So I told him, I want that. So he did this. He said, okay, we open up a box of letters, $5. He said, sold. I got what is equivalent of about that many letters from 1895 through 1904 between two people that wrote to each other, Roanoke and Grand Rapids. They eventually got married, which meant that the letters came back together. I have the two in the front. And they lived a long, happy life, and somebody was careless enough to just put them in auction. And when I got them, even though my intent in buying them was to separate by date, I couldn't do it. Just could not do it. Still can't do it. Won't do it. I thought about as an author, change the name to protect the innocent right and write a romantic novel or something like that. I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do. But when I open these letters, there's a little circle around it, a circle on, like at the bottom of the page by the name, and it says "Kiss Here." And they give you, because it's so old, they're so old, it gives you an insight into what was going on in history at that time. One person, I mean, they became very close, obviously, so they talked about things we wouldn't talk about in public. The guy said, I got a carbuncle. I'm like, what the heck is a carbuncle? And I looked it up and I went, ooh. Ew. And then they talked about people that were alive during that time, what was happening during that time. So it is an absolute window into history. And that's why I love seeing those kinds of things. Now, at another auction, city officials in New Bedford, Massachusetts, apparently got rid of a box load, no, must have been desk loads of material. So from 1860s through 19-something, I have the history of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Pay scales, maps, that's an article about me. But just know that I have tons of this. an architectural description of a house that was being built. Just fascinating things. You never know what you're going to find. And what I'm looking for now is, after I got this, I realized that Frederick Douglass came through there. So now I'm interested in seeing if I can find the connection between some house, some place, something that would connect that bit of history with him. Who knows what I have? One of the, and I have not playbills, but checks signed by the mayor, and Isaac Tabor was the mayor at the time. So I have original signatures of these people that lived. They were real. And one by one, I'm finding them. That when I first started, the internet didn't have very much, but now I'm finding the whole histories. This one was married to that one, their cousins, this one. And I realized that what I want to do is make it available to people for genealogy purposes. Their families are here. People that they would love to know what the origins, what happened, and what the connections were. So, now when I was researching for African Americans from Tampa, just know that all of this spirit was all a part of me. Went into the library, and they told me about the Burgett brother photographs, and that I could search for them online. I said, I want to see the originals. So I sat there with gloves in hand, and hands in gloves. And I went through 20,000 photographs because I didn't know what I was looking for. And I'm so glad I did, because there were photographs in there that were construction photographs, but they were of African Americans. They never would have been classified as an African American photograph because it was a construction photograph. And there's one of Davis Island, 3 stories in the ground, completely covered with men, from earth level all the way down about 3 stories. And that's the drainage system for Davis Island right now. That's what did it. So why is that important? My first cousin in Savannah, Georgia helped me understand that. We were at a family reunion, and he was standing on a railroad track. And he said, "Take my picture." Gray-headed man, I thought he was a little silly at that moment. And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because my granddaddy laid this track." I went, "Oh, snap." In that moment, he helped me understand, even if you don't know the exact place that your ancestor touched, if that person was a part of a team, then they were a part of that process, that history. You now have their history. There's a list of firemen in there from New Bedford. Well, that's a team of people that collectively they saved whatever city, you know? They can claim the entire history because they were a part of it. You work for a corporation, I work for GTE Data Services. I was a part of the team. And someone told me that in managing the documentation and training department, being as large as it was, we were competing with EDS and their documentation department relative to telephony. And so I either managed the largest one or the second largest one. And since GTE survived and became Frontier, then our department survived. Part of that history. And speaking of GTE, that was one of the reasons that I became fascinated with collecting corporate history, for instance, because for their 50th anniversary, they gave us this book, and it had all the transition from throughout the time of old photographs of who was president, what they did. Stopped just before me because I had just joined. But I saw someone else's book, and I did not take mine out of the wrapper for a good 25 years because it was that important to me. I knew what I wanted to do was in that book. When I finally opened the pages stuck together. And it is indeed as important to me as I thought it would be because that's what I do. And then finally, before questions and answers, as a publisher, what I love doing is telling the stories that are at risk of never being told. The daughter of Lee Davis just finished her book, and we just published that. And in that, I discovered by accident that not only is she the daughter of Lee Davis, it's the names that you see, but she's the great-granddaughter of Robert Small, who's in the history of South Carolina. He had a ship. He took his family out of slavery and became one of the first appointed and then elected and re-elected officials right after slavery. That's all in one family, and it was discovered because someone volunteered the information. She kind of took it for granted, but now it is rescued and shared.